Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Sandra Turner, host of the Praxi Pod. And today we have an amazing guest, Mr. Dan, the future work Sodergren. Nice to see you, Dan.
Lovely to be here. Thank you, Andrew, for inviting me.
And it's actually even more special because I know that you're such a busy boy and, going from one media-lovey kind of location to another. So I'm glad you can spend some time with us on today's show.
I do have the joy at the moment. It's only because, as many people have said to me before, I do have the face for radio. So yeah, I do have the joy at the moment of doing quite a bit of radio stuff, and that's because AI, the future of work and technology, has just become such a big thing. It's just a huge story, and as well as all the social media stuff that I'm doing and other things. So yeah, I have the joy of being busy. As my dad used to say, I'd rather be busy than broke. So that's the way I look at it.
Well, no, it is incredible, isn't it? I mean, obviously, the reason why I wanted you to come on the episode because, the piece that says in the middle of your first name and your last name or your surname, is a really incredible topic. Luckily, I got a chance to go to Copenhagen, of all places, last October, and I presented at the one of the Trifork conferences, the Go-To conference, and one of the things that I was doing before I did that was doing research about this whole thing about what is going on with technology and the evolution of it. And obviously we've spent a bit of time in that kind of sector, and now it's obviously becoming more and more ubiquitous, you could say. But one of the things that I found incredible, and I think this is where maybe this conversation is going to go today, is about the gap of understanding of what is a job in the future. What actually do you get humans to do, and what do you get? Which always the best way to describe it: non-humans to do.
Yeah, absolutely. We don't know what they're going to be called, but they're non-human, absolutely.
And I suppose that's why I wanted. That's why when we had that initial chat in the week, that's why I was very interested in having that conversation, because I think a lot of organisations, especially that we're talking to, and you're probably talking to as well, and I know you speak to a lot of media organisations as well, is that I think there's this kind of dawning where people don't really, maybe if they haven't got a technology background, they don't actually understand what the current state is or what the future state could be. But to get into it, I mean, for people that don't know Dan, is a chance of just doing a quick segue before we get into the meat and two veg.
I have absolutely no belief that anyone will know who I am. I'm far from it. If you want to Google me, you can find out more, or go to my website, dansodergren.com. That's SODERGREN.com, and you'll find me on LinkedIn and other things. And yeah, some people might have had the joy of listening to me occasionally, or seeing me on the BBC on TV shows and other things, which is great, and I love doing it. And I do it for a reason. And the reason why I love doing it, and the reason why I'm so passionate about it, is this future of work piece is a huge thing for society. It's not just about work. It's about much, much bigger than just work. And, and AI and technology. And I've been talking about technology and digital transformation for 20 years. And so, yeah, now I get asked to do keynotes and get asked to do speeches and talks for corporates, very large corporates and global names like Philips and other people, and Kellogg's and people, but also for much smaller organizations too. And I train people in how to use AI, but I also train leadership in how to use AI. You can get an AI leadership course, and I'm doing that at the moment. But as you say, one of the exciting things for anyone who's in this world, and I have the joy of being called a tech futurist and have been for a while, which is why the BBC get me on. But I'd rather be called, billionaire philanthropist Dan Sodergren than tech futurist, right? So the reason why I'm called a tech futurist is because I did stuff before it was fashionable and before you made loads of money from it. So I had an augmented reality company, 16 years ago, when it was just in its infancy, right? I was doing stuff around AI and the idea of machine learning and algorithms really before people were coming up with this kind of stuff. And the reason why I can do that, and it's not because I'm clever myself, is I know some amazingly clever people who I've A, worked with, or B, been very, very lucky, by complete fluke, to know personally. Like a friend of a friend who was invested in a company I ran, called Your Flock, and I've known Tom Olds for a long time. Anyway, Tom Olds' best friend's Demis Hablis. And if you know Demis, and sorry, Demis, I always say your second name wrong, sorry, mate. Demis was the guy who started DeepMind, which was then sold to Google for now a paltry sum of $458 million. And I think if he looked back at that, he might got to say might rue the day a little bit, because of course he now runs Google's AI thing and Gemini project, and it's worth an awful lot more than 458 million, right? They did really well buying him at that time. So because Demis has been talking to me for 20 years, I've had the joy of seeing what was going to happen, because the guys who were making it happen were saying, and it's really funny because Demis was kind of known as semi-crazy, but I always believed in what he was doing. So AI really comes from gaming. Demis's background is, do you remember a game called Railway Tycoon and other things like that? Anyway, lots of computer games came out that had AI behind them.
I remember one called Bandicoot. I don't remember the one you just mentioned.
It didn't have quite as much AI in it with Crash Bandicoot, but if you kept hitting the X button, you did a lot of bouncing. I do remember the game. I used to play it myself. Anyway, some of the other ones are like Sims and things like that, but we're really running AI systems behind the scenes. And Demis was working with a lot of very, very cool people like David Molyneux and other people. If you're a geek, you'll know who these fellows are. Anyway, because I've known of these people, and because I've been doing stuff in technology, now people come to me and say, soothsayer, what will be the future? And the reason why I can know it is because A, because of some of the data I've been running, B, because of some of the companies I've created, and C, more importantly, it's the people I know. So you might not have heard of me, but you might probably have heard some of the people I know. There you go.
Well, it's all relative, isn't it? I suppose it's all relative. I mean, it's the same for me. I suppose it's as you traverse your journey through life. It's amazing who you bump into, and it's amazing also what you learn. And then also, at some point in the future, people think, this person might know something to talk about. So, when those dots kind of connect, and the moons kind of, align in the sky for a nice time. So,
So some of these thinking, because to come into it as well, some of the thinking that I've been doing recently, because I've been, it's really around this idea called the fifth industrial revolution, right? Which is something that I've been thinking about for quite a long time, like behind the scenes, and digital transformation pieces were all happening, but there wasn't really an engine to make it happen, right? Then you had COVID, which then became this, obviously, as you know, the world's biggest experiment, especially around work. So hybrid work became this force. I was very lucky to run a company called Your Flock at that time, which was all about HR, tech, and values, and doing all sorts of clever stuff. But it really, that kind of showed us that there is a potential not only for hybrid work, but for working in a completely new way, right? So the future of work idea, which I've been talking about for 10 years and telling people that Zooms were a better idea than going down to London and physically seeing someone, some of the time, we were always forced to travel. Now we're not, which is great. It doesn't mean, however, that I don't believe human beings should meet face to face. It doesn't mean I want to get rid of all offices. It doesn't mean I want to destroy human beings. No, it just means that we don't need a huge amount of money and resources going into damaging the environment when realistically we can work from home more. Right? It's just that. Right? Hybrid work is here to stay. The data, doesn't make a difference. I understand that there's large businesses, and I understand there's a huge amount of money in property. I get that that's going to have to now transfer that bit of wealth into different places. And I know people are crossed by that. But you've got to remember, the people who are crossed by that are the same people that told us, to get into the fields. They're the same, it's the landed gentry, of this world, right? It's the same people that have always been crossed with progress. It's the same people, and it always is. It's always the same people. And I get they don't like hybrid work and they want everyone to return to the office. I get that. But productivity means, human beings who are happy and more productive, right? And the productivity levels have never been higher. Now, if you look at things like the wage level, though, it's never really been lower. It's getting lower, but productivity is going up. So the thing is, we've got to start giving people some of their lives back, right? And this is why you've got this movement like the 4-day work week. Again, so many people are up in arms about this idea of the 4-day work week. But it's the same people who were up in arms about creating the weekend. Okay? Because why should we have weekends? Why shouldn't we work 6 days a week? Well, yeah, I get that human beings who make money from the labour of others want them to work more. Of course they do. That's how they make money. It's how they accrue wealth. That's why there are more billionaires now in this country, in the UK, than there've ever been before, right? Because we've allowed it to happen. But that doesn't mean it's right. It just means that money makes money and capital makes money. And if you are, if you don't care about people, and I'm not saying that this is the case, but if you don't care about people, but you care about the outcomes they provide, of course you're going to want them to work harder. But we have been working harder. And then you're going to want them to all work in the office so you can see what they're doing. Like in a factory, by the way. That's why factory work
I was going to say to you, just to jump in a second, was is that view, is this your understanding, is that the, some organizations obviously embrace this kind of the true multidimensional context of work, but then some organizations have kind of been quite stringent about actually, this go back to the office, be visible. What's driving that, do you think? Is that insecurity? Is that control? Is that a combination of all those factors, or is it just really because that's just a pattern that's been accepted before, and that's the kind of the Linus blanket of how an organisation is supposed to operate? Is that your thought on it? Or
I think all three are absolutely correct, right? There is a fear thing, right? You've got to remember, middle managers and office managers have a job because they have to manage the office. If the office isn't there, they won't have a job. Middle management wouldn't have a job. Middle management have the ear of the C-suite, right? They're bosses. Yeah. Now, there's no way that any human being is going to sit there and go, I'm going to argue about me losing my own job really passionately, because they're not, right? And of course, most people will go, well, the reason why we need everyone back in the office so I can see them. By seeing them, I know they're working. Now, this is simply not the case. And in fact, we are beyond the moment of data on this. We weren't 2 or 3 years ago. Well, now there are so many case studies and there's so much data saying this is the exact opposite to reality. Plus, everybody knows it's the opposite to reality. Everyone knows working from home a little bit, being a bit more happier, you're better at work. Yeah. The only people who say no to this are the bosses. By the way, those bosses have had working from home forever themselves, by the way. That's why you don't really see your CEO very often. That's why you don't see these bosses, because they're running around the place and they're working remotely and they're working from everywhere. So they've always had this lifestyle. They've always had it. And it's one of the perks, by the way, of working your way up the organisation is you then don't have to do the work in the office. Now, this is the irony. So why are they telling everyone to come back to the office? And part of it, sadly, is fear. They don't have a control mechanism. Also, it's to do with weak company cultures. The reason why they're weak company cultures is because people don't really like each other. And so why is that? Because the company they've created is one of this kind of bizarre, not collaborative, it's all competitive. And so they've got to have everyone kind of hating each other in the office. Now, this doesn't work. Now, I don't mind that these kind of old-fashioned companies are saying everyone get back to the office, because people will simply leave their businesses and they'll go to other businesses. So the market should sort this out. The problem you have now, I think, is that there is a potential mechanism because of the cost of living crisis where employees have to go back and work for bad people who create bad businesses that don't make very much money, that aren't productive. Yeah. Now, that's actually not good for anybody. Now, I get it. Okay, it's good for, I don't know, maybe it's good for Greg's or, Costa Coffee or whatever. Maybe it's good for the central business district. But those things didn't exist. We've not always had the central business district. It doesn't mean that everyone should be able to charge a fortune just because you're in the city centre. And some of those buildings should be repurposed into, heaven forfend, things like houses for people, because human beings live in houses, right? Why is it all business stuff? Anyway, promised I wouldn't rant too much on that one, but you can see that the future of work, and it's going to be fascinating, by the way. Now we have AI. This is the thing I talked about, the fifth industrial revolution. The fifth industrial revolution isn't just about artificial intelligence making us more productive, but it's also about organizations being cleverer. And so there's 4 different intelligences you've got to think about with this fifth industrial revolution. Artificial intelligence is one of them. There's independent intelligence, there's emotional intelligence, but there's also organizational intelligence. And part of that organizational intelligence is going to be the fact that you admit that hybrid working is here to stay and you change your business based on that. But again, not everybody wants to, but heck, let's be honest, not everyone wanted to use computers when they first came out, but we all are now.
Well, I think from a positive point of view, what you're saying is there's an opportunity to embrace some new principles of how you design an organisation, because obviously certain roles have to be in a certain environment for them to be effective. But other roles maybe have got some more flexibility, and it really allows you to rethink those roles and that structures. Is that what you're thinking as well?
Absolutely, but also the organisation intelligence you're going to need actually has to go. It has to go beyond that, Andrew. The idea of flexibility around where you work is not radical flexibility. Radical flexibility is going to be when you work as well, right? So the idea of forcing everyone into a 9 to 5, I think that'll be a bit of a thing of the past. Also, where you work kind of globally and remotely. Again, some of the most successful businesses now are starting to approach this in a very, very different way. Yeah. We're going to start thinking about not just that, but also like what you do. This is a mind-blowing one, but actually what you do will be different. And I believe, again, this is based on data, but also with my tech futurist hat on, we're going to go much more to the kind of the unbundling of jobs and the idea of the gig economy. More and more people, which is why independent intelligence is going to be worth so much. You know, if you can adopt radical flexibility in your business, you're going to have a series of very high performers. Yeah. And your business is going to be much, much more, I don't want to say football team, but more like a sports team, you know, where you have superstars who come in and come out. And that's just the way life is. And you get, you know, it's like team managers completely panic when their superstar's going to leave. They go, no, go because the team's bigger than you. Therefore, we're going to get somebody else in. Well, that's just having a decent recruitment strategy, right? Now, don't get me wrong. And again, I get told off by very big corporates about this, and they're right. But very large corporates sometimes look at us in a different way. So they'll say things like human capital. Now, you know, if you say the word human capital, I'm already out of the conversation because the way you look at human beings is fundamentally maybe flawed.
It's like a balance sheet. It's like a balance sheet view, isn't it?
But it is. It's purely a balance sheet. It's even worse than that. You look at them as stock. You look at them literally like cattle. And you basically say, you know, because that's why I use the word, right? Human capital. Oh, the problem with our human capital at the moment is because they have rights. Well, yeah, they're human beings. Okay, they're not, you know, maybe they're not as important as you are in the organisation, but you shouldn't look at them now. You just look at the people as numbers. Now, and I've got to be careful again with words, but I think in the future, large businesses are going to employ less people. Yeah, you look at a lot of the next generations, and they do not want to be employed by the massive businesses for a raft of different reasons. You know, flexible working being just one of them, but, you know, having purpose, having autonomy, having mastery, having a career thing, all this stuff is part and parcel of it. And I love the next generation because I think they've got it right. Now, people who are older than me believe that, you know, the next generation are entitled and they're spoiled and they don't work hard and these other things. But actually, I think they understand that there are boundaries and that work isn't the most important thing. And you should be paid.
Just a quick question on that. What generation do you think that's cut in? Well, you know, because I know there's a different, if you look at, you know, Gen X versus Gen Z versus millennials, there's obviously different, well, allegedly different socio-demographic factors at play here.
Allegedly is the key thing, right? So if I come in with my rather clunky old school marketing sledgehammer approach, and I say, well, basically anyone over the age of this is this, and everybody knows, well, of course we all know that's nonsense, right? Because it's all a mindset, right? You know, people who meet me are like, oh, you've got a millennial mindset. Well, I don't have a millennial beard, let's put it that way. You know, and my knees aren't millennial. I wish they were. And then you look at things like Gen Alpha, which is the next one. And I think this is going to be the most important thing to think about. It's not, again, no disrespect to the millennials, certainly not baby boomers because they're on the way out. But you look at the Gen Alpha as they're coming into the workforce, as well as millennials. You look at the differences there about how they look at the world. And that's where you see the future. The future is not going to be how baby boomers, well, they do, because it's not. God, that's not the future. They're not going to be around, right? Now, and even my generation, we might be in positions of power, but the future is not ours. The future was ours, it's no longer, right? So the next generation of young people that are entering the workforce, they are fascinating to me. They are the future of businesses. And I think a lot more of them will become entrepreneurial. A lot more of them will have independent thinking. A lot more of them will be critical against hierarchical businesses and businesses that don't allow freedom and things. And it's the weird one is that that's good for business. It's not good for old people who don't like that. But you coming in and saying, yes, but that's the way we did it when I was young. Therefore, you have to go through the same traumatic experience that I did. That isn't going to work.
It doesn't kind of wash anymore, does it? I mean, that's just not the way to motivate and inspire people.
Well, those are perfect words, Andrew. That is not the way to motivate and inspire people. And if you truly believe as a leader of a business or a leader of a team that your job is to instill fear so they come into the office and work for you, the next little bit of the world is going to be really scary for you because that isn't the way it's going to be. Now, do not get me wrong. If loads of things go wrong in the world, that might be the case. We might go back to draconian, forcible, labour camps. We might. I'm hoping we don't, but we might. And then if that's the case, then those kind of leaders will win. But they won't lead for very long, because they won't win for very long. Because at some point, everyone's going to go, actually, shouldn't we make nicer workplaces? Not because, by the way, that I'm a massive hippie and being nicer is, is a kind of moral standpoint. It's actually better for business. It's better for businesses. If people are happier at work, they do better business. And if you've got happy customers with happy employees, you have a happy balance sheet. It's that way around. It's like the same with diversity and inclusion. People think I talk about diversity and inclusion in the future of work because it's a morally sound thing to do and it's woke. It's not that. It basically makes a better business. Microsoft got better when they became more diverse and inclusive. It's just there, right, for them. Microsoft, when they had
it's celebrating the diversity and the differences and actually seeing it through different lenses. Because I think sometimes people just don't. If everybody's like, it's back to the George Orwell thing, isn't it? It's like thought speak, right? You've got to get that kind of that richness of conversation because there's something you may miss. Yeah, you may open your mind to that kind of thing rather than closing it.
Well, absolutely, and this is where you get innovations, right? So if you can empower your employees and you have a diverse and inclusive kind of practices in your culture, you'll have more innovation. And innovation is the thing that's going to be needed in the fifth industrial revolution. We cannot go back to the way things were because we have too many things now. Artificial intelligence being one of the key things that is going to be too much of a differentiator. This whole thing about, you can have, like they said during COVID, that there was 10 years of progress in 1 year, right? But now with AI, it's looking like it's like 10 years of progress in 1 month. Like, it's insane what's happening with AI. And AI now allows us, in some businesses, they're saying it's like 42% more productive, which, by the way, is a huge jump in your bottom line. But in other businesses, like in marketing, for example, where you can find there's more people using it in marketing and journalism than anywhere else. The new stats have just come out. It's about 61% of people have said that they're using AI in those fields, which is the highest. Underneath that is, I think it's computer programming underneath that, which is another thing I'm not going to talk about now. But those people that are doing it, those people that are using AI now have productivity levels that are 300% higher than those people who aren't. Right? This is.
Well, it was very interesting. I was watching the interview of Sebastian, the CEO of Klarna, and literally, it was just literally when it was all breaking, this whole OpenAI stuff with Sam. He literally flew to San Francisco and basically doorstepped him, to get a meeting with him, and then said, look, how do we collaborate to get something working and actually go and implement it in the business? And you've probably seen the outcome of that. It's quite a well documented business impact, positive business impact.
Yeah, totally.
But that's showing about being agile, not just sitting on your hands and doing something about it.
Absolutely, and that this is what I talk about in the book. The fifth industrial revolution. That's a great example of leadership showing independent intelligence, right? He was independently intelligent. He didn't say, "Oh, I'm just going to wait for everything to happen." He independently said, "I am going to go meet these people that are basically going to be the driving force of the next economy. Because of that, I want to integrate this into my business. The only way I can do that is to push in front of the queue." Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying every CEO should go talk to Sam Altman. I think you may have missed that opportunity, but definitely every leader should be looking at how do they incorporate AI into their business. I know more and more people are doing so, but it's amazing how slowly people are doing so. So for example, most businesses, large businesses, do not have...
just a quick question. I was just going to say, but you said about the pace. Yeah, so I get the impression that we're kind of over the honeymoon period now, right? And now people are starting to say, okay, how do we really embrace it and get something done and have a real impact? But is it then back to that organizational thing we talked about the structure, where it's getting lost in a certain layer and people are not making decisions? So is a procrastination kicking in, do you think?
But this is the same with every piece of digital transformation. Every part of transformation, right? You want to change a business and it's over a certain size. Every business change that happens will get stuck in a certain layer of bureaucracy. I know of a business that we are potentially working with quite soon, and their CTO plus the rest of their team, because they've been given AI. Yeah, because number one, they've been given it, so they've run with it. Now, if you know personality types, CTOs aren't necessarily, and their teams aren't necessarily the best for giving a piece of digital transformation to, mainly because it gives them a load more work, right? But also transformation scares the heck out of them, right? And they're right. You can bring in cybersecurity problems, server problems. You can bring in as many problems as you want. right? But you've got to remember, Andrew, I'm sure you do. Can you remember when mobile phones were a problem, right? When people said, everyone's going to have a BlackBerry because it has to link into our server and it has to link into our infrastructure and we have to have this and we have to have that. Insane, right? Where's that now? Whew, gone. No one gives a monkeys. Why does no one give a
I mean, if you haven't got a BYOD strategy, then you kind of like you're you're not connected to the future, right? So
this is it used to be bring your own device, right? But now it's going to be bring your own AI, and this is where people are missing what's happening. So you have this epidemic, really, of what Ethan Mollick brilliantly calls secret cyborgs. So you've got these secret people that are using AI all the time, but not telling you they're using AI. But of course, you don't know what type of AI they're using, right? And you also don't have an AI policy. Now, this is the terrifying thing. So many businesses don't have an AI policy. So their people don't even know the fact they shouldn't be using such and such AI because it's going to be, cybersecurity risks, etc. You've got a load of people that are using free AIs to do business work on. And that's fundamentally flawed and very dangerous. Much more dangerous than it was to bring your own mobile to work. Much more dangerous because you're giving away potentially business information, right? But the problem you've got is leadership aren't investing. And so everyone's using the freebies. But if you're using a freebie, you are the product. If you're not buying a product on the internet, you are the product, right? So you're feeding their data system. Now, I don't think it's quite as far as some people are saying, which is they're going to nick all your data and know everything about your company and tell everybody. Not quite sure that's the case, but it could be, yeah? But you don't have an AI policy. So you can have a load of employees that are doing cool and funky stuff without an AI policy that could be fired for doing what they're doing, but they don't know that they could be fired for it. It's an HR minefield, yes.
Yeah, it's a bit like what you're saying is they don't know what they don't know. It's that kind of unknown unknowns. Yeah,
we're not training them with AI. Number one, every company over a certain size should train everybody how to use AI, right? Then you should say, and this is the AI we're going to use. Okay, this is the company AI. Now, your CTO and the other people behind the scenes and leadership should have taken hold of this 6 months ago, because it's actually a 14-year-old issue. It's actually a 2-year-old above the parapet moment, and it's now business critical, right? But it's business critical. But it's up to you because it's up to your business. But it's a bit like saying, we're not going to use computers because they're never going to take off. We're not going to use email because it's never going to take off. That's totally up to you. I can still remember having bosses that didn't do emails and their secretary printed them out and they read them on a piece of paper, did this thing, they did. And they did a little red lines through things.
Well, they put the notes on it and then sent it back. Yeah. Okay.
And absolutely, right? Those people don't have businesses anymore. They don't, because those people had an archaic idea about the future. All they changed. And they started using email, and they started doing typing with one finger. Right? Now,
but then it's about not just about intelligent action, but it's also bravery and courage, isn't it, that's important.
Yeah, well, this is why the AI revolution, or this fifth industrial revolution, as they call it, it's not really about industry. That's why there's 4 different intelligences. You have to have emotional intelligence. You have to be emotionally intelligent at this moment in time, right? You've got to start using empathy and having emotional intelligence, as well as independent thought and independent intelligence, as well as organization intelligence. It isn't just about AI, because if it was just about the technology, we'd completely miss the trick that actually this is about the people, much more than it is about AI. It's much more about the people. It has to be, because that's business and that's companies. But if you're not training your people up to make use of a technology that can make them 40% more productive, 400% more productive, then it's on you as a bad leader. And the learning, I do a lot of work with learning and development people, and it's under their remit, right? But it's kind of not. That's why it's kind of a bit weird, because it's a tech product. So is it learning and development? Well, it kind of is, but it's also the CTO. So the CTO needs to be able to do some stuff. But then the boss needs
But it's also fundamental, jobs to be done. What are in an organisation? What are the actual tasks to be done? And then that's that piece around, well, what do you still need a human to continue to do in this new world, and what should continue as is, and what needs to be transformed or changed, which means actually there is actually a responsibility by each individual to think about that. But then also, if you don't upskill people and help them understand what the potential with it is and what you could do, that's not going to trigger the idea generation to actually go and change it, is it? So it is there's a few different factors there.
There is, and that's exactly why digital transformation is a big thing, right? This is exactly why it's been a big thing for over a decade, because there's loads of different moving parts. It doesn't abrogate our responsibility. This is the great thing about revolutions, is revolutions will happen whether you're on board or not. Yeah, but this fifth industrial revolution is happening now, right? Now, the great quote from William Gibson, the future is everywhere, just not, it's just unevenly distributed or not evenly distributed yet. So loads of people look at other sectors. And so if you work, let's say you work in HR, and I do a lot of trainings around HR people, and you'll then look at lawyers and say, lawyers are being a bit silly because we can see that AI is massively changing that sector. And when I do AI trainings, I never talk about their sector. I always talk about somebody else's sector, because it allows people to go, my goodness, they've been a bit silly. They should have seen this coming. And then they go, whoa, wait a minute, what are we doing? And they're like, oh, we're not doing very much either. But if you go to them and you say to people, why aren't you doing more with AI now? It's a danger. You need to start doing this. They'll just get panicked, and they'll just have analysis paralysis, right? So you've got a variety of different things you've got to put in place to make complex change. And we're in an era of unprecedented uncertainty. Yeah. So we can't get rid of the human elements of this will cause fear and anxiety.
But just the quick question, Dan, about is it about ownership? Who do you there's kind of like who should own it, or who is owning it that you're seeing is being effective, or is that down to individual backgrounds and whether they've got that skill set or that way of actually being embracing that change opportunity and being inspiring to actually get behind it? Are you seeing a pattern? Is there any kind of patterns forming that you see?
Well, this is the scary thing about it all, Andrew, is I don't think there's really a pattern. It depends on individual businesses. But I think you've got to have some responsibility for the C-suite, because they are meant to be the board of directors. They are meant to be the mind and brain of the company. You can't just go, oh, well, we don't have to think about it. You're the brain of the company, you should. Is it the CEO? Well, yeah, it's future vision and strategy. Yeah, of course it is. Yeah, absolutely. Is it the CTO? It's much less the CTO than people think. Chief Technical Officer really has nothing to do with this, because it's not a piece of technology they're bringing into their system, right? If, however, you are looking to build a small language model around your key knowledge factors, and you can use that to inspire and help your own people, yeah, that's a CTO project, because that's a load of coding and some clever stuff they've got to do. But if you're basically saying we're going to use large language models like OpenAI and Copilot, etc., to empower our workforce, that's the leadership, and then it's individual training. Yeah, but what we're actually finding at the moment is the employees use it more than the C-suite use it. And they're using it more because they can. And because this is the joy of it, Andrew, is you don't need any coding. All you need to do is be able to learn how to do prompting. And even then, you don't really need to learn how to do prompting. I mean, I do a course on prompt engineering and prompting, because you can get a huge amount more out of an AI machine by knowing the psychology of AI. The differences are insane, right? But this is exactly the same as managing people well and having interns well. Like AIs are just like having an intern. And everybody now who has a computer and has internet access and a couple of quid in their pocket, they can now have their own intern. You can actually have 10 interns working with you, and your boss never know. Now that is where we are right now, right? Now, very, very soon, we talk about the future of work here. We're going to have AI agents. And those AI agents will be able to do your roles in your business and be able to do parts of your job, quite a lot of your job. And for some people, it'll be up to 80% of your job.
Is this like the true crystallization of the digital twin? You're actually going to have a digital twin.
Everyone's going to have a digital twin, Andrew. Absolutely, everyone will have a digital twin, whether you like it or not. By the way, whether you think you should or not. Everyone's going to have an email address. Yes. Everyone's going to have a telephone number. Yes. Everyone's going to have an AI. Yes. Right. And whether you think that Siri is your AI, or whether you are using one of the new Samsungs with some of their new kit, which they showed me the other day, whether it's Google coming in with Gemini and bringing it into the back end of pretty much everything, whether it's Microsoft and Copilot, etc., everybody will have an AI. Now, the question for us as bosses and leaders of businesses is, how do we manage that? But more importantly, how do we support it? And the key one is, how do we incentivize this? Yeah, because to have this moment of complex change happen, you have to have vision, which I think is to do with the leadership, right? Vision, skills, that's really an HR and learning development moment, fair enough. You have to have the resources, again, a C-suite decision to put some money behind it, yeah. And you have to have some kind of action plan, yeah, which again, I'd argue maybe is the C-suite, yeah. But the big one is incentives. Yeah, what is the incentive for me as an individual working for an organization, be it large or small, to become more productive? To become more productive so the bosses can make more money. Also, I can hold onto my job more, or whatever it is. So one incentive might be, well, everyone's doing it. The old saying, AI is not going to replace you. Somebody using AI will. Because that's where we are right now. If you're not using AI...
But you see, those practices you just talked about, I mean, if I think about a CEO's role, you're talking strategy, right? You're talking talent management, people, talent, how do you attract and retain and develop? And then also resource allocation. So it's right in the bullseye of those three dimensions, isn't it, as a CEO role, about Absolutely. How do you get behind this. But I think that's a great point about reward structures. So what is the reward incentive, short, medium, and long term, for the humans, to work more in a different way, where you don't... I mean, it's a very, 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 very hot topic, that. Very, very hot topic.
Okay, so I'll give you a really good example, right? If I am a coder, and I know coders who are doing this, who are clever enough to create a digital twin, and a digital twin is too strong a word, but everyone likes to use it. But let's say an AI intern that helps them with coding. A lot of these people are creating not only the coder, they're also creating the debugger and also the manager, right? So they've actually got a mini company inside themselves working for somebody else. Now, this is a really, really interesting point, because I've also got other friends who used to do this, but just by outsourcing. So they'd outsource their job to somebody over in India, to 5 kids over in India. It used to be, sadly, young people in India, not pay them a huge amount of money, but then get given the code, oversee the code themselves, give it to their boss. Right? That's how they made money. In fact, actually, I stopped employing someone who I found out was doing that, because I think it's morally wrong. But also, he also had 2 jobs, and that was morally wrong, and he wasn't actually very good at doing his job, which is even more annoying. Be amazing at your job, fine, but he wasn't even any good at it. It's really annoying. But this is where we're going to be, right? So it's not going to be outsourcing to other places around the world and remote workers. It's going to be outsourcing into your own laptop with a small language model and a capacity, because everybody's computer can now hold an AI system inside it. Yeah, because your phone's going to be able to. Your computer certainly can. And you can download these things straight away. They're open source, you can download them. Who is incentivizing your coders to do that? Because if you were sensible, you'd say to every coder, this is how you do this. Okay, this is how you become a 10x coder. We want to keep you. We're going to train you how to do it. We know we're going to lose some of you because you're going to do other stuff, but we're going to keep people. But that's up to you to create the culture where they want to stay and they want to be more productive. Now, this is going to be a big jump for everyone mentally when you suddenly get people who are 10 times better at their jobs because they use AI. Now, the question for everybody...
that's really massively tapping into the essence of work. I mean, that's huge.
Well, this is what I mean. This is right. Okay, so in my TEDx talk, which I did at Brighton in April 2022, I talk about what's the future of work. And I think the future of work isn't what you think it's going to be. Yeah, it isn't what you feel it's going to be, but it's going to be what you love. And the reason why I talked about this a couple of years ago is because I could see AI on the horizon. And I knew, because I knew from Demis and other people from 10 years ago, the reason why I moved out of marketing is because they'd already said, marketing, you've got about 10 years down. They got their years wrong, by the way, because Sam Altman brought out OpenAI and the whole thing exploded and rapidly evolutionized. But they were pretty much bang on. Move out of marketing because everyone's going to be able to do marketing. Yeah. Then you've got this whole thing where move out of lots of different jobs because AI can do those jobs. But the thing that AI can't do is love what it does. Right? It can't be motivated to do it. So if you love building and coding, you're going to already start using AI to make sure you can build and love doing more stuff. It's the love and passion that engages you, right? It's not your boss that engages you. It's your love for the subject.
Yeah, I mean, it's the essence of being a human being.
Yeah, absolutely. This is why Daniel Pink talks about, and so again in my TED talk, he talks about, autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Right? If you have those things, you have a great way of driving yourself, and that's what we should all be creating. But on top of that, if you love what you do, you're going to be better with the machines. You're also going to be self-motivated to learn new stuff because you love what you do. Now, we then have this massive issue, Andrew, in society where, because of, let's not be silly about it, where work came from, back-breaking labour in the fields, hand-breaking labour in factories, heart-breaking labour in offices, this is how it was built. We're now going to this bit where loads of older people, maybe some young too, say, you're not meant to like your job. That's why I pay you money. Yeah. Now, this becomes a problem because the employer and the employee contract starts to break down. Because actually, it shouldn't be just because I pay you. Because if it's just because I pay you and you can hate your job, you're going to get people who only turn up for the wage.
You mean that's because what you're saying is that in a certainly inappropriate relationship, then that's kind of like using that as the.
We all know in the knowledge economy, in the where it's going to be cognitive abilities rather than built. If it's that works if you're lifting stuff up, right? If you're a waiter, perhaps maybe that works. If you're lifting things up, if it's physical labour, yes. But if it's emotional labour and it's cognitive ability, that doesn't work as well because we all know the driver after something like £60,000, it's diminishing returns anyway. You can pay someone more and more money, but actually it's diminishing returns. It just is. That's just life, right? Thank God it is, by the way, because if it wasn't, then the game would be how do we pay people the most amount of money as quickly as possible.
You just made me think about like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Is there kind of like is there a new triangle we need to create?
Well,
or is it that self-actualization? It becomes like multiple layers.
Yeah, but that's exactly right. Whether the Maslow hierarchy is the way to look at it, because I think, don't get me started on that. But the actual principle is exactly right? Because if you think Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you're basically saying you can provide this level of security, which is what money does, right? You then get to this next bit where you think about love and belonging. Okay, cool. That's most probably company culture, because that's the love and belonging piece, right? And then you get up and a bit up. Well, what happens if a load of people, like suddenly everyone can become 10 times more productive, but they can also work anywhere they want? Then you've got this self-actualization piece, which might mean that a load of people don't want to work for Coca-Cola anymore, and they want to work for green projects or something, which is because they think it's spiritually better than selling software.
You potentially get the risk of huge workforce displacement, or basically making different choices, I suppose, about what people want to do and how people want to exist in the planet.
Absolutely, but that is a great thing. That is what revolutions are meant to do, right? It's a bit like saying we don't want to have a revolution because in revolutions things change rapidly. No, that's what revolutions. We need a period of revolution right now in pretty much every country in the world. We need a period of revolution, not just because we're destroying the planet. Because, by the way, there's no business if there's no planet, right? If climate change continues and it's not a hoax, which I don't think it is because the science is pretty strong, and you can tell it's getting warmer, and then we all die, there's no business, right? I get the idea that some super rich people might run off to Mars or go to the moon. It doesn't help us here. So what is wrong with a whole generation of people going, wait a minute, me selling more shares or me selling more Coca-Cola, me selling more McDonald's, that's most probably not that great for the world, and I don't really feel good about it. I tell you what, I'm going to take me and my AI bots are going to go and work for something that's good. That's awesome. By the way, this is what AI is doing now. Look at what Google's doing with AI. It's making more breakthroughs in healthcare than pretty much anything else. And that's because human beings want to do nice things for the world. And so actually...
Well, I'm going to say, it actually is... I know people talk about technology being, a risk to the future of the human race. But actually, does it actually enable a reboot of what truly is important?
That's what I believe, and if I didn't believe that, I wouldn't go on radio, I wouldn't go on the BBC, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing with my life, right? My life has to have a purpose of being this kind of tech optimist. But the reason underneath it all, there is a thing that if we can become more productive using AI, then we can spend more time with our families. We can spend more time with our society, more time with communities. We might not be buying a load of crap to make ourselves feel better because work is so bad, right? This is the thing that people miss. If you're happy at work, you're then happier outside of work. What we do with our days is what we do with our lives. If you're miserable at work and you come home and you're miserable to your kids and you have to buy a Porsche to make yourself feel better, and you have to, whatever you have to do to fill this existential void you have because you hate your employment. I mean, so many people I know who are very well paid are miserable people who do miserable things, and they make the world worse because they're miserable. Now, I'm not saying that AI, because AI will let them do less work. Well, actually, maybe I am. If AI allows you to only work 1 day a week, and this is just my view of the future, if AI, computers, lets you work 1 day a week, wouldn't it be great if the government then came in and said, you know what, you've got 2 or 3 days where you're not doing anything. Why don't we give you a tax break if you go and help charity, if you go do something for society, if you become a nicer person? Will incentivize you in some way. Now, this then comes back
to... go and use that other capacity to to make a difference in some area that you have some skills or experience to
Absolutely.
make for the greater good.
For the greater good, right? For the greater good, right? This is exactly the same as, back in the day, America was started building stuff for the greater good, and everyone was drafted into this New Deal, right? This is what AI allows us to do. It's now a new deal for the whole of society. The question will be, what will people do with that spare time? Will they just sit down and watch more cat videos and not care? Or will they be incentivized to be different in the next revolution? Now, this is the fifth industrial revolution. This is the point of being, emotionally intelligent, independently intelligent, organizational intelligence, etc. The new companies of the future will not just use artificial intelligence to become better. They'll use all these other intelligences to make the world a better place. And I think that is why young people will work for them more and more. And you'll see a big change in society. Of course, I am called a utopianist. but what's the alternative, Andrew? What is the point of looking at AI and going, well, it's going to become Terminator and it's going to kill us all? Because, if it is, it's already too late anyway. So I'm saying it's not that. And by the way, that's only because you've watched that film. If you hadn't watched that film, you most probably wouldn't think that.
Well, but I think I think this thing about actually calling it artificial intelligence is actually a misnomer, isn't it? What should it be called? Should it be called RHI, reboot human intelligence?
I'd love that. I'd love to. I've been saying call artificial intelligence something different for so long, but everyone thinks I'm insane because it's computer intelligence, and then saying it's artificial really misses the power of it. This stuff. Yeah. It's actually beyond. That's why artificial intelligence or computer intelligence can do things and create things that human minds can't do yet, because that's what it's been able to do. It's been able to create new medicines and even new polymers and all sorts of groundbreaking things that the human mind couldn't even comprehend. So if you then steer that towards a better good for the world, and this is the big question big question for governments. Governments should be getting behind this, so then that power can be created for the public good. It can be created for society's good, not just for profit for massive companies. Because sadly, if you just have the profit motive, you're just going to create stuff which is good for you. And if you had a different motivation, perhaps we could change the world in a better way.
Wow. I mean, I knew this episode was going to be good, but wow! Much gratitude, Dan, because I think you it's a really good conversation. It's because I think what you're raising is that the future is bright. We've got to wear shades, even though we've not got shades on, but actually, it shows that the world and the opportunities at a crossroads, and which way it goes is going to be fascinating for the human race in the future.
And what's really exciting is that actually this is different to most other industrial revolutions. This is what I'll end on, is because it's so exciting and people don't get this. All it takes is for you to have the motivation to learn about it. Yeah, that's number one, which is free, right? Having a laptop, which most people have, internet connection, most people have. Yeah, and that's all it takes. It doesn't take anything more. Don't need to learn coding, don't need to do anything clever. You can just learn the basis of learning English, and having the motivation to do something is where we are. And then the computers will do the rest. Now, that's why it's exciting, because in the other industrial revolutions, you had to own a steam engine. No one owns steam engines. There's only 3 people that own them, right? The next one was you had to own a factory. No one had bloody factories, right? The next one was this, next one was that, right? Basically, it was always rich people that could do it. Now this is why it's so exciting. It's
a massive leveler, but it's also doing massive heavy lifting, isn't it? Which was incomprehensible before.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the point. So if you control your own destiny on it and you jump hold of it now, like for example, if you listen to this call, start looking about prompt engineering. I'll do a special offer on the prompt engineering course. I've made it as cheap as I possibly could anyway. But literally in 2 hours, you can learn about prompt engineering. You can make a massive difference now using any AI machine. Right? Underneath all that, there's a next level, which is around leadership and learning around leadership. And that's up to leaders who are listening to the call to come and find me, and maybe I can help their organizations. But then the last one, though, is this next bit, which is the next jump, which is AI agencies. How can you create, which we all can if we start learning how can we create mini computers, versions of ourselves that do 80% of our job whilst we sleep, whilst we're doing everything, and then we become the managers of the machines. And that bit's why it's really exciting. If we can manage the machines that do the heavy lifting, especially around knowledge, and especially in this next bit, my goodness, the 4-day work week will not be an issue. It will be, it literally will be a 2-day work week. And my God,
maybe you need to get that book out before Tim Ferriss, slashes it. It's the 0.4 of a day work week.
I love his work. I love Tim Ferriss's work. I think if he'd known about AI, I think it'd be fast. Because literally, honestly, my job in marketing, I can do some of my stuff in an hour that normally would take a day or two. And that's not even with an agent. And with an agent, you could literally have that thing running in the background. And cleverer people are already doing this already. And what I worry about is that a lot of people will be left behind. And I don't think we're in a world yet where universal basic income. I don't think that's coming in yet. I don't think it's going to come in for quite a few political, rounds yet, and that's what I'm worried about. Is the next generation. We've got to be really careful.
The gap opens up it becomes too wide to be bridged. Yeah,
absolutely. You think about the digital gap was bad enough. The AI gap's going to be much, much bigger.
Well, all I can do, Dan, is just say thank you. That was absolutely brilliant, very intense, but brilliant. Spending some time with you. For people that want to know more about what you do, I presume what's the best way of finding you on the Tinternet and learning more about what you do?
On Tinterweb, I would hope they could actually even ask the AI system and I'd still appear, but that may not be the case. So let's go for normal old-fashioned search. You could just search for me type in Dan Sodergren. You used to better type in Dan the Marketing Man and I would turn up, but I think it's now Dan Sodergren. It's Sodergren. My website's dansodergren.com, and I'm very prolific on LinkedIn. If you want me to come to your organisation and do a very intense or inspiring, I like to call other people call them inspiring, rather than me calling them inspiring talk for your organisation, then talk to my agents either at Pomona Partners if it's in the UK or JLL if it's remote and it's global because they handle my global inquiries.
Well, sorry, I picked the wrong word with the I at the beginning. So yeah, it was very inspiring. Brackets and intense. It was I squared. So that was Dan Sodergren, who is a technology optimist. I think you called yourself. Is that right? A futuristic optimist.
I love that. I'm going to nick that now. Tech futurist and so futuristic optimist. I like that. I don't know if I can spell it, but I like it.
We've got another one. Rebooting human intelligence as well. Forget this AI stuff.
Well, there you go. Maybe I could put that into a new book. I've got to stop writing books, though. That's the thing I've written. So I'm just writing books far too many.
There's all that smoke coming off the keyboard. That's what it is, you see. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for coming on the Praxi Pod today. That was a brilliant episode. That was Dan Sodergren, and catch you later on the next episode of the Praxi Pod. That was Andrew Turner. Thanks very much. Thanks, Dan.